You're listening to the AdCast, the podcast for marketers and advertisers, with your host, Eric Elliott.
All right, so we're back for episode 2 with Attorney David Aylor of David Aylor Law Offices. So, David, the first episode, we discussed a lot of different topics. Now, I want to go into what's difficult about promoting a firm or marketing a firm. One of the things we said during our break was you get overloaded with so many opportunities. So how do you know what's right? How do you figure out this is what I should do or I should devote my time to listen to this?
It's very difficult, and I think I've probably turned down some good opportunities and not known it, and that's just honest, because one, they're going to come at you all the time, and you're going to be bombarded from local folks to people across literally the world, but of course, you know, throughout the United States with different marketing opportunities, different agreements, and different things like that, and you really never know until you look into it. So one thing I always do is first, I have a marketing director. She's been with me for a couple years, and she's over several different parts of the firm in regards to the marketing, but one of them is screening. You know, I hear about a company, right. I say, hey, I want you to find out what this guy or what this girl is selling, what's it about. Now, she doesn't have the background legally and doesn't have the background to know whether or not it should be something we do. She'll look at the price point, explain sort of the features, and then we determine from there. But what I also do is I'll talk to other attorneys. Have you ever heard of this company? Do you know if anybody that uses this at work? Oh, we tried it. It was terrible. You know, and then if I'm actually on the phone with the person, I'll say, okay, this sounds great. Can you let me talk to the guy in Alabama that does it, the lady that's doing a real great job in Louisiana does it, and that bigger firm, you know, out in California that has it? Can I call them and talk to them and see how they're doing it? And if they're willing to give you those references, then that helps a little bit, you know, and you're willing to put the time in and do it. I will say, funny story, one time I called a firm, I believe it was in Mississippi, and the head attorney didn't realize they were still using it, and his paralegal said, we hadn't gotten any leads from that thing. It was terrible. And they had given me the number to the firm to use as a referral. So, you know, it took that one extra phone call to see, well, this is probably not a route we want to go down. Right. But to your point, you've got to evolve. You've got to continue to look at different things. I'm right now involved with a group called Lofty Group, and Lofty Group is a law firm that's originally out of D.C., New York originally, now out of D.C. Obviously, they can partner with different firms throughout because of that, and they work with myself and another lawyer in the upstate. And believe it or not, I met the owner of this company at a pool at a conference, and not while we were in the conference, while we were relaxing outside of it down a trial lawyers conference in Miami. Wow. And he was not interested in looking in marketing from a technical standpoint in South Carolina, because he said the state was too small and not enough big cities. So we changed his idea on that and said, well, the state's small, how about just 2 lawyers involved and they cover the whole state as opposed to covering a major metropolitan area. Now he's in 33 different states, and the company just got added to the Google list. And so we were there at the beginning and have continued with the company. I met that guy at a pool. So, you know, that's the type of thing where I didn't even understand exactly what he was telling me when he was trying to, I wouldn't even say he was trying to sell me. He was just explaining what he does. Right,
but it was just like, you know, you had your blockers on. You didn't want to hear it at all.
100%. So, I mean, you have to be careful. But one thing also, and I think this is true to really tell the younger lawyers, don't say yes to everything, even if it does sound good. Sometimes people call me and say, you know, hey, this is a great opportunity, and say, you know what, it is a great opportunity, and I think it probably would work, but I can't commit $4,200 to you for the next 6 months. I want to, and I wish I could, and maybe I will be able to at some point, but where my budget is, it's not realistic, and that can be hard. You know, no different than a child wanting a toy that, you know, their parents say it's too expensive. It's almost the same thing. You want it bad, you think you need it, maybe you even do need it, but if you can't afford it, you can't afford it.
Yeah. So how do you, with the different types of marketing that you do, how do you attribute your dollars to an ROI? Like saying, like, okay, if you do radio or television, how are you saying, well, that worked for me? How do you check that?
It's very difficult to do, particularly if you do various types of, advertising and marketing. One thing, obviously, if it's web, you'll sit there and ask the person, how did they find out about you? And most of the time, obviously, they found out because they did a Google search or they had some sort of web search. Now, going outside of that, people will say, I saw your commercials on television all the time. Well, that's not true, because I don't have any David Aylor Law Office commercials on television.
Get out of town.
I have Writers Law Group, our writers division, but people that were not calling about motorcycles motorcycle accidents would say that. One thing I find interesting, particularly with radio, is people will come in and I'll say, who, or someone in the office will ask them, how'd you find out about this firm, that sort of thing. And they'll say, well, a friend told me about you. Okay, well, who was that? You want to tell that friend things? That sort of thing. And they'll say, I can't remember her name. I can't remember his name. The reason that is because there wasn't a friend. What it was the radio. But they don't want to say they listened to me on the radio, and that's the reason they came, because maybe they think that doesn't sound, something of some sort of like actual prideful type of issue that comes into play, I guess. But it's very interesting. So it's hard. Sometimes people don't really know how they found you. Other times people just directly say, in a recent DUI I had, the lady pulled out the wristband she had on the night she got arrested and said, this is how I knew to call you. So sometimes it can be that direct, but when you spread your marketing out like we do because of budgetary issues and the competition and a lot of guerrilla marketing involved, unfortunately you're not going to always be able to tell how much something hit and what really did work or what didn't. For instance, if a concert is having a big event, that type of thing right here in North Charleston, Riverfront Park, doing so many great events now. Let's say we sponsor something, we get involved, spend $5,000. Did we get 5 cases off that? Did we get 10? Did we get any? Right. Or was it worth it just because people saw the exposure? So a lot of times you're never even going to be able to get that direct ROI. But we do the best we can to sort of understand what works. And this goes back to the diversity issue that I was referring to earlier, is also looking at who do we think is coming to this event? Are these people that have heard our name tens of times over? Or is this a group that maybe it couldn't be familiar or shouldn't be so familiar with us that it would be more beneficial to spend this money and have that exposure of having a booth there if we need one, giving out swag, doing wristbands, whatever the case may be.
But the one thing I'm hearing from you, though, David, is, and a lot of firms, they don't know the difference. There's marketing and then there's advertising. Right. You are a firm believer in marketing more than you are advertising. Is that?
Absolutely, because you're pushing it out. When you're marketing, you're always looking at, who you're trying to market to or who you potentially could be marketing to. When you're advertising, you're just going for the more generalized, and which is true in a lot of different industries. You're just spending money. And so with our budget being what it is, and it climbs, of course, every year, just like the competition does, we try to be as specific, I should say, as possible. But you're still going to swing and miss sometimes. Mm-hmm. And maybe the next year when that comes around, you don't do it. Or maybe the next year that comes around and it was so good the first year, they know it worked out well for you and they've jacked the price up twice as much. Now do I still want to do it? And now the team gets together and we make those decisions. So you're going to have that constant just sort of revolution of how you're looking at each certain things, whether it be one-off events or a series or whatever the case may be.
Mm-hmm. You remember the Yellow Pages back when every attorney did the Yellow Pages?
With the magnet on the front of the main attorney, whoever spent the most money? Right.
I remember I had an attorney, they used to invest $500,000 a year in the back. $500,000 a year in the back, and now you don't hear from that attorney at all. So just think about how that industry is like the dinosaurs, they were just extinct. So what happens 5 years from now when it comes into marketing and advertising a law firm? Because we knew what Yellow Pages and YP was back then, and we know what it is now. Where do you see it going 5 years from now?
I think, one, you're just going to continue to see an increase of online marketing of various types. And I also think you're going to start to see advertising within different streaming programs, whether it be streaming from a local channel that has an online presence and they have a 10-second commercial before. YouTube, of course, does this type of thing now. We see these, you can skip the ad. I think we're going to see a lot more of that. I don't think the TV is going to go away anytime soon, and I don't know that it'll ever slow down outside of an economic issue, simply because people are still going to watch TV. And no matter, for instance, when terrestrial radio was concerned with Sirius and XM coming out, a lot of people like Sirius and XM, but a lot of people still just turn on their car and put on whatever the radio's on. They're not using an iPod, you're not using an iPad, whatever the case may be.
There's still an audience there.
Exactly. So I don't know that TV will slow down. I would think it has to at some point, but then again, it's hard to say if it will, because where does most of the money come from when you're looking looking at television for whether it be television shows and the people getting paid, or the movies and that sort of thing. And then, of course, sports and the athletes. Those are TV contracts.
That's right. That's right.
They're not computer contracts. They're TV contracts. And so I think that side of it will probably stay the same. I hope it doesn't go any more than it already is now. It's got to be at the highest amount. Billboard marketing advertising, we've seen a rise in that. I've done a billboard here and there. I don't know how effective they are. Correct. Back to what you said earlier with ROI. X number of cars passed by that day. Did they even look up?
Right.
Were they
on their phone?
Even if they did look up, were they thinking about what they were going to have for dinner that night? And it didn't matter what that sign said. They weren't reading the actual letters and words on it. So, I mean, there's so many different plays that come in. On the other hand, when you're just talking about name recognition and trying to put that name out there, billboards are great because the amount of exposure you get to them.
Give me, is there, if I were to ask you, David, how proud are you of the brand that you've created with David Aylor Law Offices?
I don't know it's so much that I'm proud of the brand in and of itself. Of course, it's great when someone recognizes you or you get invited to come on a show like this. But more what is important to my firm is not only are we putting money out there, not only are we trying to put our name out there, and of course that's self-serving. You're trying to build and grow your business, but we're also trying to give back to the community. And I'm much more proud of the different events that we get involved in. Not that other firms don't, not that other businesses don't, but I really make it an emphasis of my firm altogether, including myself. We have 5 lawyers and about a staff of 15 beyond that. And I encourage people to come out for every type of event that we can possibly do and get involved, because I think, you're asking a lot from the community. You want them to trust you. You want them to use you while they have so many other choices that may be just as good. And you want to show them that you're giving back as well, that you appreciate what they're doing in the community. And you're not just coming to the soup kitchen so that you can get one picture and then put it on Instagram. You're going there and you're going to serve soup for 4 hours, and you're going to drop a $250 check off to pay for that soup. Those are the type of things that I'm proud of more than anything else.
If you were to walk up to some strangers, let's just say we're in North Charleston Park Circle, or go anywhere around here where you have an impact and they know who you are, what do you think people would say about David Aylor Law Firm?
It would depend on how well they knew me. A lot of times they may say they've heard of me but don't actually know me personally or don't know anyone at the firm personally. But what I'd hope that they would say is that not only do they know that we're around and we're in the community, but also that they would be aware of what we do within the community. I hear all the time, "You're everywhere, man." Well, that's great, but just being everywhere doesn't mean you're not doing anything meaningful. So
Right.
You really have got to have that component with it. And there's a lot of firms that recognize it, and we're seeing more and more, and that's also something that for younger lawyers, it doesn't cost anything to give 4 or 5 hours of your Saturday, or a Tuesday night and do
That's great advice, David.
pro bono clinic, that sort of thing, and it goes a long way. And it may not be what you feel like doing that Tuesday night, but guess what? There's going to be a lot of things in your career you don't feel like doing that's going to help you and definitely better your law firm or your practice as a whole.
Wow. So we're going to take a break, and then we're going to come back with a really, really hot topic right now. Okay. This whole R. Kelly trial.
Wow.
I think,
at this point.
I know. I think at some point we all have probably danced or heard the music. So we're going to take a break, and we're going to come right back, and we're going to discuss criminal defense.
Sounds like a plan.
Awesome. All right, welcome back to the AdCast. David, we took a nice break just now. We covered a lot of topics. One of them we were talking about just being bombarded with just different offers and how do you know what to go through. But now I want to talk a little criminal defense and also some current news. An artist, this whole Me Too movement, I mean, we've seen a lot happen from Kevin Spacey, Brett Ratner, Harvey Weinstein, Bill Cosby, and now, we have this artist, R. Kelly, right? And so there's been a lot of news lately about this guy. And I'm actually friends with a guy who actually wrote a book on R. Kelly that just came out, Jim DeRogatis, up in Chicago. And what do you think of this trial? What do you make of this whole arrest and everything else? I mean, my opinion is like, I just can't believe that a guy at that age would even do the things that he's doing. Like, I just think it's despicable, for one. But I mean, it seems like his whole trial is like a circus almost.
And it's going to be a continuing circus. And now that you have, dual investigations and dual pending cases, in that you have state criminal cases, and then now, just as of this week or last week, you have a federal case. More likely than not, you will see the federal case go forward first. That's usually the way it works. Not always, but even though the state charges were filed first, the federal case will go first. Now, when that happens, if in fact he's convicted either via a plea or at trial, what they end up doing with the state charges, sometimes they'll dismiss them, sometimes they'll plead them and run them concurrent to whatever the federal charges are. But right now, he's in a pretty tough position because he has a legal team that has been by his side and done a very good job for a number of years protecting him. They also did that very good job by getting paid a lot of money. That money is no longer there. They're still sticking with their client, and they've made that pretty obvious in the court, and they've obviously stated his financial status, which is less than nothing at this point.
Wow.
And he's now being held without bond, which is fairly common on serious charges within the federal system. So it's probably not going to turn out anything like the previous legal battles that he had in the past, both criminally and civilly, but particularly, of course, the criminal case we're aware of that he actually was found not guilty of. So it's going to depend on what is he willing to do. Obviously, the plea bargains are always out there, but one thing is, you and I were talking off air, when it comes to the feds specifically, they have a 97% conviction rate at trial.
Wow.
And there's a reason for that.
Wow.
They're not coming for you till they don't just have you. They got your mama, they got your next door neighbor, and they got the lady that knows you from church.
Wow.
And they've got them all proffered, and they've got all their statements, and they're ready to come because they have the money and the time and the resources to spend on these cases, no matter if it's this type of case where you're talking about child pornography and things related to child molestation, or a drug trafficking case or guns, that sort of thing. Your local county sheriffs, there's a lot of different things they get involved with and work in concert with the federal government, but they don't have the resources, they don't have the funds, and they don't have the time. So the cases are not going to be as lengthy most often. But when it comes to the feds, they don't swing and miss too often.
I mean, the guy actually, I know you said 97%. I mean, that's pretty strong. And he pled not guilty. But then from what I read, he still has to go to New York because also there's some charges from the Eastern District of New York that they brought against him too. So is that two federal districts that he's going to have to go against? Or
it's because they're claiming that different acts occurred, whatever they may have been, in those two different areas. So therefore, there would be the different district courts. No different than if you were in a different city or on state charges, you'd be in that county, or if you're in a different state. Like for instance, you may have charges in North Carolina and South Carolina. So he has the Chicago charges that would be in that federal district, and then if New York claims that they have evidence and a grand jury has indicted him on things that were related to that jurisdiction, you'll see two separate, completely different cases.
Yeah, I mean, every interview that I see, I mean, this whole story is just like it's fascinating in itself, and amazing in itself too. But like their attorneys are like they say he's innocent, he wants his day in court, but it looks like the chips are stacked up against this guy from former employees, family members, bank statements, audio recordings, text messages, and video. I mean, some of the most incriminating things possible. I mean, as an attorney, how could you say to this person or your client, hey, continue to fight? How could you do that against someone who has a 97% rate?
Well, first of all, you're always going to plead not guilty at the very beginning, and the reason for that is when you're getting arraigned is because you've not seen any of the evidence. Of course, there's been leaks and various things like that, which was what you're referring to there. But I can promise you, outside of just the basic indictments that have been read and provided to his attorneys, they've not seen any of the evidence. So their jobs, regardless of what is stacked against him or what may be stacked against him, is to evaluate all the evidence. And then that's when they really come back to the table and say, here's where we stand, here's what we think, here's what they're going to try to do, and here's what probably the result will be. And then it's up to the client to determine, as the boss of the case, whether or not they want to move forward with trying to negotiate a plea, or whether they want to move forward with, actually going to trial. And each case is different. And you have to weigh out the credibility of the evidence that they bring in. And you also have to look at it from just the standpoint of, within the criminal procedure process, is there part of this evidence going to be things that can be thrown out, not actually brought into court? There may be motions related to that, violations of his rights. So there's so many different realms that come into play before you finally just say, hey, here's where we are, this is where we stand, this is what they're alleging, here's what we think, here's what we think they'll get in, not get in. So there's a lot of analysis and review that has to go on that they're really just starting. Wow. But on the federal side, these cases move fairly quickly, a lot quicker than a lot of state cases. For instance, the state cases may take 2 or 3 years simply because they're backed up in court. There's a lot of other cases in front of it. You see the federal system with their docket move a lot quicker. So you would see something, I would assume, within his case on the federal side, short of a lot of motions and things like that, within relatively the next 12, 18 months at most.
Wow. Because the last trial he had lasted like 6 years.
Right.
Which was that's a long time, almost unheard of. But 6 years before, and then this time, it seems like they're moving a lot faster, like you said. But one of the things that they said inside of the whole trial was the accusation of witness tampering as well, too. I mean, how does that come into play? Is that pretty serious when it comes to a federal or even a state offense, David?
Absolutely. It's difficult to prove, but if they've got direct connections, sometimes witness tampering can be bribery, of course. That's one thing we think of. And then, of course, it'd also be threats. Or veiled threats or third-party threats, that sort of thing, to accusers or alleged victims. So those would definitely come into play. Now, whether they would prosecute those alongside the crimes of a sexual nature, or that would be separate in and of itself, it all depends on where the case went. If you see a plea bargain, for instance, a lot of times someone will be indicted for a tremendous amount of charges, whether it be state or criminal, because the grand jury, which a defense attorney is not allowed to attend and have any part in, has heard the one-sided testimony of an investigating officer or agent from a prosecutor or a United States attorney, and then they make a decision on whether or not it should be indicted. That doesn't go to any type of defense that could come into play as the credibility of the witness. There's no cross-examination. So you're going to have a lot more indictments more often than not than you ever will actual convictions. And also within a plea bargain, they'll actually throw out some of those indictments.
Wow.
So it's kind of an intimidation factor to some degree.
Do you think also the era that we're in now, the Me Too movement and everything else, do you think in any way that can kind of help influence, decisions, or not just decisions, but the way that people think now, or the perception of charges now?
Absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of people that have been accused of some horrendous acts, worse than some of the things R. Kelly has been accused of, and they're not in jail, they're not in prison, they're not under any kind of indictment because, their life has changed. They may have moved out of the country. They're not foreseen so much just like on the front page. I mean, I think recently, just after you saw the Lifetime special on R. Kelly, I think that probably, people that are watching these things, the federal government, the agents, the attorneys involved, they're human just like us. They have feelings, they have emotions, and you have people that want the public that want someone to answer for these types of things. If R. Kelly was 10 years older and had pancreatic cancer and was living in Europe trying to get treatment for it, would they still be going after him? You could argue maybe not. You could say it was sort of in the past. But then the other side of that is, look what happened with Bill Cosby.
Yeah.
So it's really tough to say. But yes, the environment, the political movement, the nature of where things are throughout the country is definitely going to be a part of it, because there's always a political play involved.
So now, another thing, and this kind of ties into the marketing and to the R. Kelly thing too. Like what I've noticed is like his attorney is they're doing a lot of online Twitter wars with the Michael Avenatti guy, and they've made things kind of public. Is it the same way, like if you were defending someone and you go to court, do the judge the judge and jury, do they look at like what you're doing on a public display as an attorney to kind of say like, oh man, this is this kind of case, or this is a marketing lawyer coming in here with a PI case and he just said on television he got his client $500,000? Do they take those cases serious from attorneys who are high profile or that market?
That's an interesting thing to look at because it really goes both ways. First of all, you have to be very careful what you say about any case that you're involved in as an actual attorney. Now, being a third party, like Michael Avenatti or any other talking head out there, they can make their own opinion and say whatever they want. But if you're actually engaged in the case that is at hand, now he may represent a victim, but that may not be a victim related to specific criminal cases. But what you also see is, yes, it's marketing to some degree because that attorney's name's getting mentioned. But in reality, what they would argue and what you would want to believe is to be the truth is that they're trying to put a message out there. They're trying to defend their client. Something that we often say walking out of bond hearings with a bunch of cameras around is, let's withhold judgment, if you will. Now, we all know nobody does. It is definitely very much a guilty until proven innocent country that we live in, and that's unfortunately, but that's not going to change. So sometimes it's just trying to send a message. Now, as far as the judge is concerned, you will definitely see judges scold and do a lot more than just that, if need be, in relation to public comments during a pending case. Jurors, on the other hand, are not supposed to be aware of it at all when they come in, and if they're actually picked to be serving on the jury, or if they're aware of it to some degree, they have to make sure that they say under oath that it has not affected them. They've not paid enough attention to it. They may know a little bit about the scuttlebutt or some different things that have come out, but it's not something that has really been involved in their life. Because it's interesting, one thing I can tell you about being involved in a lot of jury trials is when you're in these worlds, they're a lot smaller than you think, and even R. Kelly's world is. I bet if you called 10 people throughout the United States right now, 9 of them probably don't even know who R. Kelly is, and the 10th one may have heard his name before but not know anything about him being arrested. You know why that is? Because they're worried about getting their kids to school and paying their mortgage and seeing if their boss is going to give them that raise and looking forward to their vacation that summer. People have their own lives and their own interests. You and I, being involved in the type of businesses we are, we're constantly looking and reading and checking out local news, checking out national news. So some people just don't have that awareness and don't want to have that awareness. So believe it or not, you'll find 12 jurors who've never heard of Robert Kelly. And they'll be on that jury, and it'll be up to the government, if in fact it goes to trial, to prove their case.
Wow. With that, we're going to take a break.
You don't need a marketing agency. You do deserve very important placement. VIP Marketing and Advertising is a cutting-edge strategic digital, creative, media, and marketing partner that provides services for businesses of all sizes. To stay up to date on the latest marketing news, subscribe for email updates at veryimportantplacement.com.
Live from VIP Marketing Studio, this is the AdCast.
All right, so we're back with Attorney David Aylor. Man, we covered a lot today, David.
We did.
We covered a lot, man. I think this has started something beautiful.
I agree.
Us doing our own show.
I appreciate you having me.
I appreciate you being here, man. So now I want to do one more thing. I want to go into what we call the lightning round. I'm going to ask you what your thoughts are on different mediums. You just tell me. There's no right or wrong answer because I think the landscaping of marketing and advertising has changed so much, especially in all of our professions, ours and yours as well, too. So I'll jump right in, and I'll ask you about newspaper. What are your thoughts on newspaper?
I think that you're going to find a lot of lawyers that wouldn't find any benefit in newspapers. However, if you're a probate lawyer, you probably would find a benefit in it because you're talking about people that would be concerned about wills and probates, and those are the type of people that are still reading newspapers.
Okay. Radio.
I think radio is great, and I say that probably a little bit biased simply because I've had success with it. But I think, you reach a lot of people still, even with the different avenues that people have to actually listen to music or podcasts or whatever the case may be. But also I feel like that you can get a lot out there, and you can get it repetitively out there for a lot less value or a lot less cost than you would, of course, if it was on the television.
Television, perfect segue.
I think television's great. Just be ready to cut the check.
That was simple. How about cable television? Some people don't know. It looks like television, smells like television, but it's not television.
If you're going to be on cable television, you better know your niche. You better know what you're trying to sell. And when I say sell, you're trying to sell yourself, but specifically what about yourself. You better know what type of viewership you have, what their age group is, and various different factors involved. But just kind of blindly going in because you're getting better pricing is not going to get you anywhere.
Gotcha. Outdoor advertising.
I think it helps. I think it's difficult, obviously, to determine what you're getting from it beyond just brand awareness and top of mind as far as the naming. It can be very expensive, but there's a reason they're all over the place, right?
Right. It got to be. Digital marketing, and that could be Google AdWords.
I think they're great. I think you got to be very careful and cautious when who you're working with and understanding what you're doing. I've seen a lot of lawyers that are very well respected, successful attorneys waste a lot of money because they didn't take the time or didn't have someone within their office take the time to really understand how it works and what would be most beneficial to their firm.
Right. No, 100%. I totally agree. Social media. Let's kind of break it up. Facebook.
I think Facebook is great because Facebook obviously has a lot, it used to be for a lot of younger people, and now you're seeing more people between the ages of 35 to 65 on Facebook. Those are going to a lot of times be the decision makers, whether it be something related to one of their other family members that may have gotten hurt in a nursing home, or it be their child that's been arrested, or themselves has been involved in an accident. So I think you hit a good crowd there. And Facebook is, as you well know, can be very distinct as far as what type of group you're trying to target, and then that can really help too to know what you're spending your advertising dollars on within Facebook.
How about Instagram?
Instagram, I think there's definitely benefits from it, but obviously with the way that Instagram accounts work, I think it's a little bit more difficult. There's still, I think, ways that you can work with it depending on what type of groups you're looking into and that sort of thing. But I don't know, at least in my experience so far, has Instagram really come to the point from an advertising standpoint that you see with Facebook.
Awesome. So, I'm not going to keep you too long, but I want to definitely, we talked about the rolling bike night that you got coming up. I want you to kind of tell the audience about that a little bit.
Yeah, well, so several years back, I guess it's been 4 or 5 years ago, we started doing a bike night. We did it once a month for 7 or 8 months, depending on what the weather looked like, and we do it the last Wednesday of every month. Originally started at a bar downtown called Royal American, had a great turnout there and did it for several years there, and are going to be there again this year. And then a couple years ago, we decided, hey, let's not just do it at one great spot, let's take it around the Tri-County area. So we've gone to several different places throughout Charleston County, Berkeley County, Dorchester County. This time we'll be in Charleston County on July 31st, the last Wednesday of the month, right at the Hooters there at Northwoods Mall. It's a great environment for the bikers to come out there. We get bikers from all over the place that even come and travel. We've got a great live band, and one thing that's most important, kind of going back to what we talked about earlier with the community, is every single time we do one of these once a month, and we do them, I said, 8 to 10 months a year, the bar or restaurant or establishment that we go to, they pick the charity that they want part of the proceeds
really
to go
good.
to.
Really good.
So we have raffles, we have different ways to raise money, games, and different things. So you're out there, you're having a good time, you're looking at other people's motorcycles, you're meeting new people, maybe somebody to ride with, and then you're also raising some money for a good cause that matters to that place.
Man, so David, thank you, man. You've been a hell of a guest today. We covered a lot of topics. I think this was awesome. I can't wait for the people to listen to this on the podcast. And also, this is also going to be available on YouTube. So if you want to get to it on YouTube, you can go to veryimportantplacement.com.
They'll see how good looking we are there.
Yeah, we're damn good looking. And also, David, please tell the people how they can get in touch with you. Tell them how to find you.
Yeah, davidaylor.com is my website. That's probably the easiest way. Also, of course, Facebook. We're on Instagram. There's various ways of calling the office always. 577-5530, I would say, is the main number amongst probably 3 or 4 other ones. But all that matters at the end of the day is, even if we're not in the office, we do have 24-hour answering service, and we get those messages no matter what time of the day or night it is. So we'll get back to you. We pride ourselves on that. We have a larger staff for the small amount of people that we have involved, simply because we want to make sure that even if we can't help someone, we at least get back to them and try to lead them in the right direction, whether it be another attorney or just referring them into the bar system as a whole.
Man, David, thank you. This has been the AdCast. This is a podcast for marketers and advertisers. I want to thank you again, Attorney David Aylor.
Thanks so much for having me.
Awesome.
Thank you for listening to the AdCast, the podcast for marketers and advertisers. Please be sure to subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, SoundCloud, wherever podcasts are found.
Copyright VIP Marketing and Advertising. Produced by Craft Creative.
When all eyes are on you, make it count. From audio to video to graphic design and more, Craft Creative can do it all. We don't make commercials, we craft creative. See what we can do for you at wecraftcreative.com.